Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Indieheads podcast. I'm your host, Matty, aka Recon IG. On this week's podcast, we have
Zach, aka Waffle 113. I'm back, y'all.
Ted,
Ted, aka Dang Dad Burrito.
Josiah, aka Wild Imp.
and we have a special guest on this week's podcast, and that is.
Mark from the YouTube series Spectrum Pulse.
So, yeah, we're having Mark on. Mark is probably one of my favorite YouTubers right now. He does music reviews, and I think right now he also does the Billboard Breakdown series, and I think I watch that every week. It's great. And we've done a couple Billboard Hot 100 discussions on our podcast, but like it's nothing compared to what Mark does. And I think also you're an author. You just put out a book, right?
Yes, I did. It just came out yesterday, as a matter of fact. It's titled To Kill a Dragon. It's available on Amazon, on Kodo, and from my publisher, Morning Raid Publishing. Basically, the best way to describe it would be a cross between your typical fantasy slay a dragon story and Seinfeld.
All right, nice, man. Congratulations on the book, man. I'm pretty happy for you for that. I mean, let's see, how long have you been writing for? Like just fiction and whatnot?
Probably a good 8-9 years.
Oh, geez.
Since high school, really. So this is the first full length novel I've ever gotten published. I've had a couple short stories published off and on throughout university and now, but this was the big milestone to hit.
Yeah, congratulations, man. This is Anyways, let's get on to what we've been listening to this week. I'll start off, and I've been listening to a couple albums this week. I've been on a bit of a punk binge, as I was listening to Black Flag's Damage, which is the album I'm going to talk about. And I was like, damn, I do not listen to much punk, and I really enjoy this. I really need to get into punk. And sort of before, our main topic today is going to be Deerhunter's album, so that kind of like stopped me going for the full-on binge, but I'll probably, like, once we get done with this podcast, I'll probably, start going more into punk music. But yeah, Black Flag Damage, this is a classic hardcore punk album. Let's see. It's just fantastic. The instrumentation's great. Henry Vaughan's vocals are just like, and just, I don't think he wrote the lyrics. I think it was the Greg Ginn who wrote the lyrics. And like Henry Rollins was like, I think if I remember correctly, if you know more Black Flag than me, maybe you can just call my story bullshit or something. But I think like Henry Rollins, I think he was at a Black Flag show, and they needed a vocalist for a song, and he went up on stage and did the vocals, and they're like, oh, we like this guy, we want to have him to the band. And then like a few weeks after they add him to the band, they recorded this album. But yeah, this album is just straight up classic. It's just fantastic hardcore punk. I think I listened to My War a while back, but like I couldn't really get into it as much as Damage does, because Damage is just sort of like, it's a lot more concise and to the point of just, and having trouble articulating myself for this one, but yeah, Damage is great. I think my favorite song in here is probably, let's see. I posted something on Symbol yesterday. It was like, shoot. I really should have had some notes. I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, Damage, great album. Check it out if you want to get into hardcore punk. I think this is probably like the best starting point. Would you guys agree?
I don't know, haven't listened.
I'd probably say so as far as for full length album goes.
But yeah, also I've been listening to a bunch of other punk music. I think I checked out Minor Threat, Minutemen, Bad Brains, and Wired. I'm probably going to get into a bunch of other artists because I think Ethan gave me a bunch of recommendations that I'm going to have to go through this week. So yeah, Black Flag Damage, great album. Go check it out. Another album that came out a few weeks ago that I've been checking out is Neon Indians Vega International Night School. I think I talked about
the album.
It's the name of the record. You get the lyric wrong, man. I think Jeremiah, Mark, if you don't know, Jeremiah is one of the people who's on the cast. He was like, yeah, Matty, I think it's the record, not the album. And I was like, I didn't put that. Did you put that, Ted, in the schedule?
Yes.
Good job, you got it wrong. But anyways, this album is fantastic. It's like a bunch of like really great, it's basically just sort of like a tribute to 80s pop, but also adds in a bunch of elements of different genres. I would describe this album as basically Neon Indian. He's looking back at 80s pop and he's rewriting it in his own vision, where you have a lot of elements of like, you have, of course, chillwave, since he started off doing that. You have, future funk, vaporwave, synth pop in general, just all these like pop elements and other genres just kind of mixing in for this one weird, fantastic album. Just the songs are it's incredibly groovy, incredibly catchy, and some of the songwriting on here is also really good. Like some of the lyrics are kind of like, he also kind of creates this universe with this album that's also really interesting. As I mentioned earlier, he kind of like rewrites 80s pop, where he's just sort of writing his own universe with this album, which if you dig into the lyrics, you kind of figure it out. I think some of the videos also kind of like expose this universe, which I have not watched the Slumlord video that he put out like a couple days ago, but I really need to. And actually, that's my favorite song on this album is Slumlord. It's just like, holy shit. I think like it's probably it's definitely up there on my Song of the Year list. It's just like a fantastic song. Let's see, have any of the other guys listened? Have any of you other guys listened to this album yet?
Twice.
I have.
It's on my list, but Deerhunter took priority this week.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a similar state of mind. I wanted to cover it. I probably will end up covering it at some point this week, but I just have not had time. The past week has been stupid busy for me.
Oh yeah, you put out a novel, bunch of other reviews and whatnot, man. But yeah, you're a very busy guy, it seems.
Pretty much.
But yeah, Neon Indian, biggest. I have not checked out his other albums yet. I think I'm going to later this week. But yeah, this is a fantastic album that really it really took me by surprise because like I was going in like it was like this album and Beach House and Deerhunter came out on the same day, and I'm like, I guess I'll just check out this album on a whim. And I was like, wow, this is better than those other two albums pretty much. Which I think next week we're discussing Beach House, and my opinions on that new Beach House album are not ones that many will agree with. So yeah, anyways, let's just go into what have you been listening to, Zach?
My first album this week was The Stranger by Billy Joel. As someone who played piano for 3 years in middle school, and as someone whose gateway into indie music was Regina Spektor and Ben Folds, I'm basically required by law to worship Billy Joel as a god. And luckily enough, The Stranger is just as good as everybody says it is. It is about 45 minutes and change of just perfect piano rock music. Even the weaker tracks on this album, like Vienna, I adore. And the ones that are great are absolutely perfect. If you're looking for a gateway into Billy Joel, then I absolutely recommend The Stranger. And as a side note, I also chose this one because my dad told me to talk about some album he knew about when he listened to the one I did a while ago. So there's that. That one's for you, Dad. And my second album this week, speaking of Regina Spektor, was Soviet Kitsch. This album is not perfect. Does she have these little quirks that get in the way of the songs? Yes. Does she put a straight-ahead punk rock song on an album that, to that point, had been an piano-driven indie album? Yes. But that's exactly why I love the album. I don't think anybody else but Regina Spektor could have made it, and there are some songs on it that are flat-out gorgeous, like Ghost of Corporate Future or The Flowers. And this is another one with sentimental attachment to me because my sister would play Regina Spektor in the car all the time, and hearing the songs from Soviet Kitsch as I was listening to the album and remembering that she had played those songs, it was a nice feeling. So yeah, I wholeheartedly recommend both albums.
All right, so I listened to this week Aesop Rock's Skeleton, and he's been teasing that he's got a new album all mixed and mastered this week, so I'm pretty excited about it. And so this one is definitely one of his best works. Like, I would probably say it is his number one, because he finally takes up the production for himself and really just makes some amazing beats for the whole thing. And then next up is Del Producto's High Water. Now, the thing about this one is it's not necessarily in the normal kind of album he'd make. It's jazz, which is very interesting. He does a lot of editing and stuff, and also synthesizer. It just turns out a very cool work.
Oh yeah, I think when I was getting to LP a couple months ago, I was going through like his discography. I'm like, Highwater, he made a jazz album? Okay, then I checked it out because I'm not really into jazz. Like I haven't really delved into jazz just yet. There's a bunch of genres I need to delve into, and jazz is one of them. And I was like, oh wow, this is actually kind of cool and nice. But of course, because it's jazz, I can't really completely hear all the LP elements because LP's production is just like I consider him to be one of the best producers right now, and I think he's like when people ask me who my favorite is in Run the Jewels, I'll probably say LP, which a lot of people go, "What? What are you talking about? You don't like Killer Mike?" I love Killer Mike. I think he's great in Run the Jewels. It's just I think LP like there's more subtlety to LP's stuff when you look more deeper into it. You go, "Wow, this guy is like." Holy shit, he's on another level. And I think I'll Sleep When You're Dead is like better than anything that Run the Jewels, Killer Mike has ever put out. Or any of other solo albums. That's probably my favorite. Like I actually found out there's a music video for the song Smithereens, which is also a very impactful music video, which I definitely recommend. But yeah, I think Run the Jewels, like at this point, like while I really loved Run the Jewels 2, I just kind of want another solo LP album at this point. Like hopefully after Run the Jewels 3, they go back to doing solo stuff.
Well, 5-year cycle for his albums is up in 2 years, so
Yeah, after Run the Jewels
let's
3,
hope.
could come out. Hopefully. Please, LP, give me that solo album. So let's see, so what'd you listen to, Josiah?
I listened to first up, "The Waters" by Mick Jenkins, which I actually only first listened to probably like 12 hours ago.
Great
Or
album.
like it was like late at night last night. Actually, probably like 14, but whatever. Point is, it's kind of fresh in my mind, but I thought I could speak on it. It's also kind of a jazz album with some really like immersive production. There's the theme of like water overarching the whole album, and that is in the production a lot too. It kind of submerges you. And there's some really mellow and nice bars from Mick, and he's got a kind of Vic Mensa or Chance-esque flow, and I just really enjoyed it a lot. He's got another thing that came out this year, I think either an EP or mixtape called The Waves that I'll definitely check out after this. And then I also listened to Campfire Songs by Animal Collective because that Here Comes the Indian and Halindigen, or however you pronounce it, they all got put back up on Spotify yesterday as well. So just
Holidinigan?
Hmm?
Holidinigan?
probably. Yeah, that's probably it. I don't even. But yeah, I like this a lot too. This is really a distinct change in mood from Animal Collective's other albums where it's more energetic, and this is more like toned down, some very open. Obviously, you can hear everything because they're recording it on a porch, and it's just kind of got an ambient and homely almost vibe. And yeah, I like this a lot too. The lyrics are really emotionally open. There's the track Doggy that has some lyrics about Dave's dog having to, I think it was either having to get put down or just dying. It was really just, sad stuff.
So yeah, what have you been listening to, Mark?
I've been listening to. Well, I decided that in terms of the stuff that I want to talk about here, I'm gonna edge away from some of the stuff that I was otherwise covering this week, which was 5 Seconds of Summer and Toby Keith, because I'm concerned because I don't think any of you guys listen to country, and especially not that brand of country.
Actually, I'm doing radio broadcasting at my college right now, and I had to do a report on a presentation on a country station, like pop country.
Mm-hmm.
It was just. I do not know how you do it, Mark. I completely respect you for covering pop country because I have no idea how I would do it otherwise. I could not articulate myself on how much I dislike. I'd be like, it just sucks, man. I just don't like it. But like, I do completely respect you, and I do understand the appeal of it. But just like, it doesn't like my dad. Like he dislikes the South, and that dislike of the South has kind of grown onto me a bit. So that's why I kind of dislike pop country. And of course, my sisters listen to it all the time, and it's like, oh god.
I can see that because my sister almost religiously listens to country music. I guess the Toby Keith thing is that I grew up listening to a lot of country. I hear that and I'm like, you know what? This would have been halfway decent if you hadn't already put out 18 albums in 22 years. Which is a bit of a problem considering you've kind of flooded the market and you're not doing anything you haven't otherwise done before. But focusing more towards the indie side where things are at, where you guys might actually find a little bit more respect here. The first one I want to talk about is Frankmusik. He's a UK producer. Previously worked for, I think it was Cherry Tree. Got dropped by the label. He basically is like, screw it, I'm going to do things on my own now. And he specialized in this very maximalist, very huge variety of synth pop. Now, in 2014, he dropped an album called By Nicole. Had a few of my favorite songs of the year off of that album. It's a breakup album that is so huge and powerful that it really gets to you in terms of how well his melodic composition is, considering he's basically doing this in his bedroom and like in his den, doing it all by himself with not professional equipment, which is pretty impressive. So he comes back with more of a straightforward love album this year, and it's a simpler record, but it's better produced, it's more modern, and it's generally a lot more fun. Also, on the topic of fun, the new Marianas Trench album. They're a Canadian pop rock band. They were on the fringes of emo in the late half of the 2000s. They basically then blew up into, well, basically they took the Panic at the Disco route and went for much bigger, much broader sounds. They went for more theatricality. They dropped a recent album after 4 years being hiatus, and I'll be blunt, it's one of the best albums of the year. It is just so big, so powerful, so well produced. There are so many elements coming in from 80s pop. There's a very heavy Queen influence across a lot of some of the guitar tones, a lot of how the presentation is put together. And let me say this. When you're a white guy and you manage to put together a ukulele ballad that's not a complete hack job and it actually has some real emotive power to it, that's saying something.
Nice. I'll check it out then.
Yeah, the second one, probably most up your alley. I'm surprised you guys haven't heard about it, more of it. It's the new Uncommon NASA album. He is a New York MC. He specializes in more of the spoken word, kind of off-kilter style flow that you'll hear from bands like Doomtree or a little bit from Sage Francis or B. Dolan. It's a little bit from that Strange Famous side of things. Not Strange Famous. I forget their label. Moving
Def
on.
Jux, maybe?
It's not Def Jux. You get a little bit of Def Jux if you can see a little of Campbell Ox there, and that's a little bit more abstract. But when you have very much of Uncommon NASA, it's an album focusing on the emotions and the experiences you have when you hit that halfway point of your life, when you start realizing what's going forward, what could potentially come after. And it's a jarring album. It's political at very points and very well done in terms of political. The sampling is spectacular. It was produced entirely by Black Tokyo. I was blown out of the water by how well structured and how well thought out the album is. It's a little bit off kilter. It requires a little bit of time to really take in and get into, but I highly recommend it.
I think I remember Fantano covering his album last year, I think, and I pretty much ignored it. But I think I feel like hip hop this year. I've been kind of a bit lazy about hip hop this year, just because I've become so immersed in indie music and whatnot. And just generally, like, my main source of, like, hip-hop has been r/hip-hop heads, and, like, I've just become sort of, like, disillusioned to that place. And generally, and of course last year was just, like, for me, last year was just kind of a disappointing year for hip-hop, at least, like, mainstream-wise. It was just sort of, like, there's, like, nothing here that's appealing to me that much. Like, it wasn't until, like, later in the year where it was like, okay, there's some more stuff I'm enjoying, but, like...
I think when it comes to the mainstream last year in hip-hop, it was really disappointing, but you could say the same thing with most of this year in hip-hop, unless you count Kendrick's new album as being in the mainstream, which I find it hard to say that it is, considering that while King Kunta might have been his biggest single off of it, it didn't really chart as well as it should have.
I think All Right... no, sorry to interrupt you. I think All Right charted a little better, or actually I think you're the Billboard expert, so I really shouldn't be, like, telling you you're wrong, but I think All Right has had a bit more impact than, like, King Kunta. Because I think I've heard, like, All Right, it was being used in, like, like Black Lives Matter, protests and whatnot.
And it was, and I think it's ultimately going to be the song that has the most lasting political relevance, which is kind of a shame because it was probably one of the songs I liked least on that album, especially when you're comparing to How Much a Dollar Cost or The Black or the Berry. Mm-hmm. But that's a different conversation. And in the meantime, check out Halfway by Uncommon NASA. Like, I'd argue this is an improvement upon what Fantano covered with New York Telephone last year. I think it's better. I think it's a lot more cohesive. I think it's a lot better thought out. And hell, he samples Louis, and that's just awesome.
Nice. All right, then. So that's about it for what we listened to this week. Let's get into the main topic, Fading Frontier by Deerhunter. So if you guys don't know, Fading Frontier is the 7th album from Georgian indie rock band Deerhunter. The band has had various genres and lineup changes for all their albums, and they've gone to many genres, including noise rock, shoegaze, garage rock, punk, ambient, and more. Just go to their Wikipedia page. You can see all the genres they've covered and whatnot. It's an insane amount. The band is led by, I think the band's only, like, member from, like, the beginning to, like, now has been lead singer and just general frontman Bradford Cox, who's a very interesting character if you've read on anything about him. Can we talk about, I think one of the points that we have on the schedule is that his live behavior is very interesting.
Erratic.
Because he has a solo project called Atlas Sound, and during one of the shows, a fan heckled him saying, yelling "My Sharona," and then he played "My Sharona" for like an hour.
And he told My Sharona endured still.
By My Sharona endured still. like he told the audience to take his clothes off, to take their clothes off. He had the audience lift up their chairs and just shake them. He's a very interesting person. I think I just read a Pitchfork interview with him to do like for this discussion. He's and I think actually like looking into Bradford Cox like where he is right now is very interesting because I think one of the biggest inspirations for this album was the fact that he got in a pretty bad car accident, or I think he got hit. Yeah, he got hit by a car like late last year, and so that kind of was. If you look into the lyrics, you see a lot more themes of sort of like isolation, but kind of like being happy with that, kind of being alone, which I think he talked about in the interview with that like. That people, everyone, maybe people say it's like, oh, I don't want to die alone, but he's just sort of like, I don't mind being alone. That's not a bad thing. Yeah, sometimes it can be bad, but generally it's like, whatever. I think, I'm happy being with myself sometimes. But anyways, let's get more into the album. So, I think, Ted, you are more the Deerhunter expert of all this
Hang
here.
on. Gonna be a minute. Just hang on. Keep talking.
Okay, but yeah, Deerhunter. This is probably like Fame Frontier is my first like album that I listened to like from Deerhunter. I think I tried listening to Halcyon Digest like, a couple weeks ago before like Fame Frontier came out, and I was just sort of like, okay, I can't get into this. Like I'm not in the mood for this. But Fame Frontier definitely clicked with me like a lot faster because the album is a lot more accessible than any other Deerhunter release, where it's like, oh wow, I could probably hear this on my college radio station, and that's not a knock of the album. I think it's probably better that they went more accessible because one of the biggest problems I've had with previous Deerhunter albums, going back and trying to check them out, was that I can barely hear like anything Bradford Cox is saying, which is not always bad, but it's like there's just like a lot of general distortion in their music that's like, okay, I gotta like really focus on this. But like Frank Frontier was like the production's very clear. Bradford's vocals are clear and very easy to hear. You can figure out what he's saying very quickly. The melodies and just the general like chords and whatnot, all this stuff, just it sounds very mainstream friendly, which I think is good. And I think it's a move that I think Deerhunter should make. I think it's just sort of like a queer progression because like Monomania, like I checked it out today and it's like distortion to the max. It's like I don't fucking care, fuck you. And this album's more like friendly and more like, come on in for a drink, man. Have some iced tea. It's all good, man. But also, I think also that's a funny thing with the fact they're going more mainstream, was that like if you do look into the lyrics, they're a bit like kind of depressing in certain ways, but it's just sort of like I think there's definitely some very depressing songs in here. Like a song like Leather and Wood is like just the general sounds of it is just very depressing, and looking into the lyrics, it's like, oh wow. I think he talks about like driving a car off a cliff and whatnot. It's like, oh god, Jesus, man. But let's see. I should probably stop talking and let someone else go about what they think on this album. Anyone want to volunteer as tribute?
If Ted's not ready, I can.
You want to talk about the album a little bit, Josiah?
All right. Yeah, you're not wrong in saying that it's probably their most accessible, and it's really just kind of an interesting direction of the synth poppy, more lighter vibe that they're going for, and I'm kind of into it. I think they were kind of heading that way with Halcyon Digest, and then went in a more different direction of the other feel that album had. It had kind of two separate feels, and Monomania was more an accentuation of that, and then now Fading Frontier is kind of representative of the lighter side. But I enjoyed it a lot. I like the context of Snakeskin a lot better in the album because you've got all the lighter kind of pop rock, and then those chords just come in, and it's really makes it a lot more energetic, gives it a nice midway point of the album. Is that you ready?
Yep. So really, the band has kind of been taking just a slow progression in their sound, which is very interesting. It's gotten like more and more poppy, except for Monomania, which is like a weird exception where they just went to garage rock for some reason. Like between Microcastle and Halcyon Digest, there was just this huge jump from like, feedback heavy and kind of shoegazy element to more just like this clear psychedelic rock, which a lot of people liked. And then this album is just almost pop. And actually on the influence map, which he posted a few weeks back, like one of the main things was he did an In Excess binge for a few months or whatever while he was recovering.
Very interesting.
So yeah,
I'm not sure.
Oh, well,
Go
there you
ahead.
go, Mark.
I'm not sure I can hear the In Excess as much as I heard, because also you see that influence map. You see a lot of Tom Petty, and you see a lot of REM, and I can hear the REM definitely. They're trying to call back to that, or they're trying to call back to some of that '80s, maybe a little bit of '90s REM, but at the same time, first of all, I will say that I would agree that there has been a steady progression towards more of a poppier sound, which I think has been decent. But at the same time, I found myself I really had a hard time liking this record. I gotta be honest.
I think it's really because have you listened to Deerhunter before this album, Mark?
Yep.
So I think maybe it's like because I'm going in with a perspective as like a new fan where I'm like, oh wow, I really like what they're doing on this album. I really like the fact they're doing more of a cleaner sound, which I do love some heavy shit. I do love some distorted, just like off the wall crazy shit. I mean, again, my Death Grips is like my favorite band of all time. But like I just sort of was like, I need something to get into them. I need something easy to get into them with. Like let me start off with something easy, and I think favorite tier like if you're a new fan of Deerhunter, I think it's probably this album is probably like the best place to start, where you still get like the best elements of like previous Deerhunter albums with like Bradford Cox, but also you get little elements of like stuff that's in their previous albums. Where it's like it's not like this album is like it's like a super clean pop rock album all the way through. You still have like tracks that are sort of like weird and off kilter, like Leather and Wood, which is like a lot of people's least favorite track, which I actually don't mind it that much.
I personally say that Halcyon still holds that title pretty heavily for me.
As the
I don't
best
know.
Deerhunter album.
I've heard some people in the sub say things like, I enjoyed parts of Halcyon, but it just felt like there was something missing. And for those people, I definitely say check out Fading Frontier, because I think that would fulfill it a lot better for them if they need a better entry point.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I feel like me and Matty probably had the least Deerhunter experience going into this podcast. And I first listened to this album last Friday, and I really enjoyed it. It was clean, it was accessible. Snakeskin could probably make a dent in radio single if it didn't start with I Was Born Already Nailed to the Cross, for crying out loud. And all in all, I really enjoyed this record, but I'd like to get more into the discussion with what everyone else thinks, so...
Actually, yeah, Mark, can you go more into like why you dislike this album a bit more?
Well, I wouldn't say I dislike it, because let me clarify this by saying that for most of my issues with Deerhunter, and they're long-running issues, it's been pretty much since their entire discography. I agree that Halcyon Digest is probably, in my opinion, their best work, because I find that it's the most lyrically consistent. I think sonically it comes together the best. I actually like Monomania a fair bit, and I actually like some of the more grimy stuff a little bit more there, because it actually, for once, it takes some of the tunefulness that's always gone through a lot of Deerhunter's compositions, because these guys can write great melodies and then pairs it with some burlier tones, a little bit more aggressive. Whereas this record, it's very defeatist. It's very much, I'm going to, like, all life is coming to an end. Everything is fading out. I'm on that fading frontier, and I'm okay with that. I'm just going to bury my head in the sand because nothing really matters, and we're all going to go down that hill. And I have a limited tolerance for that sort of nihilistic writing, especially when Bradford Cox he's done this before. That's the thing that probably irked me the most. I'm hearing a lot of this, and I'm like, you touched on a lot of this on Weird Era Continued. You touched on a fair amount of this on Microcastles in different forms. Yes, the production's changed. Your production's cleaner than ever. But lyrically, your thematic indulgences aren't all that different. You haven't really... for as much as he likes to go off the cuff, because he doesn't write any of his lyrics down. All of his lyrics are pseudo-improvised, unless then there's one song that was written by his co-writer. What's his name?
I think it's Bradford... No, I'm saying his name. It's like Lockheed
Pundit.
Lockheed Pundit. There you go.
Lockheed Pundit. Like, he wrote probably my favorite song on this album with Ad Astra, which I think is easily the most insightful the band has gotten with regards to some of these themes. And overall, it just got kind of... I had a hard time getting through this album multiple times, because I would listen to it, I'm like, yeah, it's pleasant. It's a more depressed version of what I could already hear with the War on Drugs and Kurt Vile, so I'm going to go back to listening to that.
I think someone called Ad Astra the best Tame Impala song of the year.
Agree with you there.
Oh yeah, Mark, if you do not know, I absolutely hate the album Currents by Tame Impala. I hate it. It's become basically a meme on the subreddit where I hate Currents. It's so like I remember like certain critics were like, "You're being way too light on how like bad some of the lyrics on this album was." Like when Pitchfork gave it a 9.3, I was like, "What the fuck? Like what is wrong with you?" Like I can get it like getting like a low bestie music because it's Tame Impala, like duh, but like 9.3. Like the production is good, but like it's not that good. Like it's just I don't want to. Okay, I don't want this discussion to devolve into another. I fucking hate Currents. It sucks. If you like it, you're wrong. But let's get back to Fitting Frontier.
What have I done?
Let's get back to Fitting Frontier. But Ad Astra, I also noticed a lot of like beach house like an influence on this album a little bit. Like Living My Life kind of sounds like not Living My Life. Take Care. I mean, the funny thing about Take Care is that it's also a beach house song. And also, it sounds very much like a Beach House song, where it's like the lyrics are very similar to Beach House, the production's very similar to Beach House, but I think it does it in some ways a little better than Beach House. I just think, in my opinion, I think Bradford Cox is a much more interesting vocalist and lyricist than Victoria, which I wasn't a big fan of the new of the last Beach House album or even Depression. Like basically like the last couple of Beach House albums, I've not been a big fan of. Like Teen Dream is still like that's number one to me. Where it takes it's basically the best elements of Beach House and then just raises them up, and they've just been slowly regressing since then. But yeah, Fame Frontier, it definitely seems like another change in I think you were talking about how like Halcyon Digest, it's like a progression from Halcyon Digest where like it was going in that direction where they're gonna become more cleaner, but then like Monomania is like, hold on a second, we're gonna go something really distorted, something really heavy, something really garagey, because fuck you, fuck this progression, just gonna go off the charts, we don't fucking care, and then like Fading Frontier is like, okay, we're going back on the chart. We don't care. But yeah, I do like the cleaner production. I haven't really gotten really into the lyrics of this album yet, which I think is like I've been trying to before we like the last two listens I did before this podcast. And yeah, I think Mark was touching on this where we're like, the thing is I can't really say anything about their previous albums because I've only listened to them a few times and can't, again, like I said, not enough to like really discuss them. And you're saying that they were touching on stuff they'd touched before and how like I'm gonna disagree a little bit on like the fact he's like, I give up, I think he's just like I don't think it's as pretentious as you're making it out to be. I think it's just sort of like I kind of realize what's gonna happen, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Like if you read the Pitchfork interview that he did with that Bradford Cox did, you do sort of realize that like yeah, he's more isolated, but like he's happier than he's ever been according to the interview. It's like this is the happiest I've been in a long time. It just seems like this album in general is just a very like, at least on the surface, it's very happy and it's very sort of like more cheery. It's like it's like he's doing okay. That's kind of cool. But then of course you look more into the lyrics and it's like, oh, he's kind of like sad. But it's like, is he really?
I wouldn't say he's so much sad as much as he's gone back into the cocoon that makes him, and he's got back into his comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And you know what, I'm okay with that. Like if he wants to be in that zone and he wants to stay in that zone, like when he's had songs that he's touched on it before. I'm very distinctly remembering Microcastles. I'm okay with that because there are good songs on this record that I actually do like. I like some of the melancholic grooves that will come up on, like you have that like on the opening couple of tracks. Mm-hmm. I like this very solid groove that comes across on Duplex Planet, which is one of my favorite songs on the record. And Snakeskin, another solid track. I feel when this album needs a little bit more momentum, it really does deliver on those more pop-like promises. But the thing is that when I start digging beyond that, I find a lot of it's been done done by Deerhunter in the past, and B, there's just not much that I really pull from it. I like when he's reflecting upon being in the hospital and wanting to break out of it, but eventually much of this album is feeling comfortable in that ending state. And to me, that doesn't touch me very well. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way.
I definitely see that. Like, I think you mentioned earlier Snakeskin. Like I kind of wish the album was more like Snakeskin in general. Like most of this album is very like toned back and more just sort of like chilled out. And Snakeskin's like it brings a lot of energy. Like the song is just very energetic. Where it's like, wow, this is fucking like it's still my favorite song on the album just because of like it's so energetic. And more of these songs are more sort of like laid back, and it's like I like the song. I think I like all the songs on this album, but it's just sort of like I wish this album had a bit more energy, which is why I kind of enjoy listening to Monomania today, because Monomania just has tons of energy to it, and of course, but also it's extremely the production's extremely it's just distortion heavy, where it's like, okay, I really want to get into this, but like it's hurting my ears, and I'm trying to do homework right now, and it's kind of hurting me doing this homework. But I think it's very good when you put it on in the background. You put it on in the background, it's very pleasant. It's still sort of like, but it still sort of is. Oh, God, I don't want to use this word, but like, you can use it in the background, but it's also still something that like if you dig deep enough, you go, oh wow, there's actually a lot to this album. But like I think like what you're doing, Mark, is like when you dig even deeper than that, you're like, yeah, they touch on this a lot in their previous albums, and it's just like, it was fine the first time, but the second time it's like you guys already did it. I don't care. Or did you like when they did it on Microcastles?
Both of you guys touched on momentum and energy, and that has me thinking, even though I think that the length of this record, only about 36 minutes, works in its favor as an accessibility point, do we think it's too short to build up that sort of momentum and energy that the other albums have?
I think so, yeah. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, it kind of goes a little bit short, but anyway, I think I like the chillness, and for reference, my favorite song would have to be Carry On, because it just closes the album perfectly. But honestly, I even like the chill because they've done a lot of just crazy stuff before with the really haziness of cryptograms, and then like just the very loud and involved sound coming from like Microcastle and Monomania. I really prefer this, honestly. Mm-hmm. It's a lot less crowded, and it leaves room to just listen.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because as I mentioned earlier, this album, it clicked with me a lot faster than the other Deerhunter album. And I think overall I do really enjoy this album. I guess, let's see, is there anything else we want to discuss about this album that we didn't touch upon before we kind of get into like our final statement and ratings and whatnot?
I think the one thing that I appreciate the chill vibe here, because in terms of, I think the point of clarification is that I dislike the chill vibe, I dislike that sort of vibe, because when I can easily put on the new Elvira album or the new Destroyer album, which was outright fantastic, or go to something like Casualties of Cool, which is very, very mellow, like has that mellowness. Where I find this album breaks down for me and maintaining that level is the production. I think a lot of the production on this album really, really does hurt it, because many of the beats on this record are very hi-fi. They're very prominent and close to the top of the mix, where you have then in the background you have a little bit more of that rustic flavor that calls back to R.E.M., that calls back to some of that Tom Petty side, and that's where the majority of the melodies lie. And I'm like, this is really good. And even when you bring in your regular drums at that level, that sounds good too. So when you add in superfluous elements like on Parts of Leather and Wood, which has a lot of these weird off-kilter elements, I don't mind the weirdness, because when you put it on Ad Astra with the radio signal coming in, it fits the overall thematic line of the song. But when it comes in on across some of these songs, it feels like an excess element to make it sound more modern and sound more weird than it is, and just clashed really in a way with the rest of the production that just did not jive with me. It just honestly, it felt a little bit sloppy in terms of being able to blend that sound together.
So yeah, again, I'm trying to figure out what I was gonna say. But yeah, I think it's an interesting point where there's definitely some inconsistencies in the production where it's like sometimes, like I said, Snakeskin is like, compared to the rest of the songs on the album, it's kind of jarring. I would consider it like True Affection was one of my favorite tracks off of Father John Misty's album, and that song is just like crazy different than the rest of the songs on that album, but it's still one of my favorites because it's so fucking different. I think that's why Snakeskin is one of my favorites, because it's so different, and it's like, if certain people, when they look at albums as a whole, which I do that too, it's like, oh, this album, it doesn't fit with the rest of the album, I don't like it. But it's like, I kind of like when songs just go like, we're just gonna go completely different route, then we'll go back to normal. Like, I'm fine with that. But yeah, I think certain things, like certain albums on this album definitely don't like work as well as they want to. Like, I think some of the more minimalistic production, it's like you could have used a bit more layers, you could have added a bit more to this. It's sort of bare bones, and then like sometimes minimalism can work in its favor, but for the most part, I do like a bit more maximalist elements. If you of course you do it well, and you have a little bit of restraint to them, and not just like just like, oh, we're gonna throw in all this, and this just for the sake of it. It's like, you know, if you're gonna add all this stuff in, make sure it all works well. And this it could have used a bit more, which I'm not again, I don't want to come off as I dislike this album. I actually like this album a lot, but yeah, I definitely think this album is a bit bare bones in certain places that could have added a bit more. But I think that's kind of our discussion's kind of wrapping up a bit. Does anyone want to give like a final statement on the album, or give their own final statements on the album and give a rating?
It's good. Like 8 out of 10. Like 8 out of 10. Not their best, but still good.
8.3 out of 10 Atlas Sound Sharonas.
God damn it! I was gonna rate the album 4 my Sharonas out of 5. God damn, you stole my joke.
Actually, never mind. I put it at 7 out of 10 potted plants.
All right.
4 out of 10 pictures of Faulkner, Bradford Cox's dog. Almost definitely going to wind up in my top 10 of the year. Very good album.
Wait, you just gave it a 4 out of 10?
Give it a 4
4
out
out
of
of
10.
5.
4 out of 5. I was like 4 out of 10.
4
How
out
is
of
that your
5.
top?
Right,
That's like the church discussion where we were talking churches.
4 out of 10 album of the year.
Which sorry, Mick, we didn't really like we discussed churches a few weeks ago on the podcast, and most of us were just sort of like and lukewarm on it, and like Zach was like, oh yeah, he was kind of agreeing with us, but like it'll probably end up in my top 10 of the year, and I'm like, what? So what? Why are you agreeing with us and then saying you're gonna put it in your top 10?
I admit it.
Yeah,
whereas in my case, churches will be in my top 10 of the year. But after this, 6 out of 10. Heard them do better. Wish it had more momentum. We'll probably be listening to War on Drugs and Kurt Vile a little more.
So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this week's podcast. Thank you, Mark, for coming on. Check out his channel at Spectre Pulse. We'll put a link in the description where you can check out his channel. And I think I guess we'll put a link for your book also in the description too.
Thank you. And I'll put a video on my site saying that any sort of review will be coming in will be pointed towards your side. So hopefully you guys will pick up some of that interesting controversy, because I'm suspecting this review might be a little bit controversial.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you guys for coming. Thank you for coming on, Mark, and hope you guys enjoyed listening to this week's podcast. And see you next week. We'll be discussing the new Beach House. Bye.